This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Would you kindly stand, face the flag behind Dr. Rob, and Pat, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ministers tonight? No, they the ministerium has not published a yearly list of the pastors that are going to cover it.
Maybe they don't know, we came back to July.
Yeah, I think it's a COVID thing, and we'll get with them. I'm going to grant the privilege of the floor to members of the Walton Fire District, the EMS, to do a brief on what some outcomes of current meetings that this committee has had. So I'll introduce Dave Simmons and his partner Patsy Donardo to go ahead. Now, just as a reference, I'm not sure when it was, but you've already given one brief to this board a while ago.
Yeah.
This is the follow-up brief to continued.
I was here, I can't remember pre-COVID. Honestly, I can't remember, it was last year, prior to over a year ago, year and a half, maybe, yeah, give or take. And at that time, we had just came into, we went to the village board, and came to the town board, just to make people aware of the fact of the long range planning committee and some of the concerns that the group and the committee had with the ambulance and emergency services in our community, looking down the road for time went on, and with volunteerism declining and the number of drop calls, that a group was formed to look at what if. And the what if is what if it came to the point where volunteers could no longer adequately handle the volume of calls and to give the EMS service to the community that it needed. What could happen, what could be put together, kind of a plan to put on the shelf so that when that did occur, that we could look and not really start from nothing. And we did put a plan together, and that's why I came here last time to talk about that plan. Well, since a little over the past year, the frequency of the squad, which I'm a member of, Patsy is as well, do as well as we can, but this with the volume of calls, the number of people that are on the squad, availability. We put a number out there at 30% drop, 1/3 drop calls a month. And it used to be, we would hit that 30%, and those peaks would be this far apart over the course of the year. Well, the problem is over the past year, those peaks have become closer together. The squad is still answering their calls, with the number of calls in which we have to call mutual aid, have to call for AMR, the commercials and like that, do get a little bit more frequent. So the committee reactivated itself. And what we have been doing is looking at perhaps, or going forward with looking at what can take place, because the whole intent is to be able to have an ambulance available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to the people who live within the Walton Fire District, which incorporates the village Walton, town of Walton, plus a little piece of the town of Hamden that is contractual with the contract. And so to go forward with this, I mean, we're looking at, again, the thing is that EMS service as like police, fire, water, etc., are what they refer to in the law as essential services that have to be provided by the political entity that is concerned, whether it be a village or a town. And along with that, what's not included is EMS. So EMS is just one of those things that some people will debate it could be an essential service, but per law it is not listed essential service. And I'll just give you a quick example of Delaware County up in Stanford. Stanford Fire Department through their council, the district up there, ran the EMS. They got to the point where they were dumping a boatload of calls. I don't know what the percentage was, and they gave notice to the area that this is like 3-4 years ago now, in October, November, that they're going to close the EMS doors February 1st and sell the ambulances. And to give that due notice, and well, basically everybody, most people in that area thought about it, but nobody really thought it would really happen until February 1st, and they shut down. And so now, if you listen to ambulance calls at all the end of the county, it's plus Stanford Fire Department they did form what's called a first response agency. They don't run an ambulance, but if there's an EMS call, they have people available. They will go out and, like the MPA or to a medical emergency, try to get somebody there until the ambulance gets there. And that's not.
So they go to the person's house, but they don't.
They don't transport, and that's if somebody's available now. I mean, from the fire department. And the thing is that that's not what we would ever. I don't think we want to happen here in Walton. So in the committee, we said, well, let's look at what is available to look out to put together something as a model of either Sydney or Hancock. And what they've done is, like in Hancock, the town has basically take over the EMS down there. It's ran by the town of Hancock. Over in Sydney, the village and town basically wanted nothing really to do with it. So the paperwork got turned over and they formed an not-for-profit. That's what they did over in Sydney. And so those are kind of some of the models that we're looking at. But while we're back here is that we went to the village board last week and we just, maybe perhaps you read it in the paper. I mean, we basically gave a presentation, that was on the virtual, and that the village holds a CON. And the thing is that if anybody's interested in running this from the municipal end of it, whether it be the town and or the village or village and or town, that's great. And the committee can work with that to offer the service. And pretty much we're just asking the village meeting that they have a certificate of need. If the village in any way, shape or manner want to be interested in taking it over, because I talked to some of the lawyers that are familiar with this, they said that before anything was pursued to set up any type of another entity, all the stakeholders should be addressed to see if they had any interest in pursuing any way, shape, or manner of the EMS, because if something is started over here, say to put a not-for-profit together, and then halfway through, all of a sudden, say the village of Walton, and that's why we're tonight in town of Walton, decides, well, maybe we want to get involved with this, it just creates havoc and a big confused mess. So suggested to contact the village to find out if they had any interest in that whatsoever. And if not, maybe to get a resolution or whether that they really weren't interested in it.
Now, did they do that?
Yes, they did that at the meeting, from what I gathered from the minutes of the meeting and talking to
So
people.
then they can transfer the certificate of need or something?
Yeah, the certificate of need, that's just a, certificate of need is a document from the New York State Department of Health that gives the operations territory for the ambulance to run it. And what occurred back in 1973 or 4, when that CON, the state came out with those, it was applied for, at that time, it was the Village of Walton Fire Department, and the emergency squad was part of it. And when it became the fire district in around 1990, when everything got done, that was one of those little things that was kind of overlooked, was that transfer of operating authority. Until about 5 years ago, when I got contacted by Department of Health, and that had not been done. And they said that we really needed to do something about it down the road, but when all this other things went on, the gentleman up there, the deputy chief, said to me, well, for right now, why don't we just let things sit until something, you find out what you're going to do, and then we'll take care of that part of it. And that's why the village in their resolution said that they really weren't interested in an ambulance service. And as far as the certificate of need was concerned, that they would be more than happy to transfer the operating authority to the entity, whatever it may be, that decides that they would want to run ambulance service in this area. So that's what we're here tonight, is to talk again to the town board as the other stakeholder in this community, as being the villages in the town and the town of Walton, is that the town has any inclination or interest in, running, overseeing, running, or having anything to do with the ambulance service.
Now, that would mean that the ambulance service people would be our employees, is that?
There's a number of ways it could be done, but that will be one way, that they will be employees of the town, yes. And that's kind of, you believe that's what they told us at Hancock, did down in Hancock, I'm trying to remember. But
I'm not sure.
yeah, I'm not sure, but that's one model that could be done. I mean, if the village, they wanted to do it, they could be village employees, okay? And if it was a town, they would be basically, town employees, covered by the town. And then the town would.
The fire department can't be the entity.
The problem with the fire district, and again, this is how, I'll say it in any other terms, but this is how, in the world of minutes, for whatever reason, a village can bill, a town can bill, but a fire district cannot bill. There has been a bill in the legislature, in the assembly, and in the Senate for, my goodness, probably going on 15 years to take that away so that a fire district can bill. But due to the resistance of Onion, and Onion is a union involving the career ambulances and other entities out there, they're fighting that tooth and nail, because they feel if that happens, it'll open the floodgates and they'll lose a lot of business, which is so far from the truth, because most of the commercial ambulances can't handle the calls that they got. That's a whole nother story. But someday, who knows when that might get passed, but it's going to be a long time down the road. So as far as the fire district is concerned, meaning they can't bill, you can't really afford it, because in looking at the models and the amount of money, you have to have some type of money to, coming in to be able to offset the expense of, paying your people that are doing the job.
Now you have to have 3 people on an ambulance to respond.
Two people, a driver, and the minimum crew would be a driver and an EMT. Well, we would like, the best model would be to have 2 people on the ambulance, an EMT, driver, and a paramedic. That way you have 24-hour ALS along with an EMT on board.
But that's not, you don't have to.
You don't have, the minimum would be.
So you had to have that 3rd person now.
No, just two people is all that's required to run the ambulance. And of those 2 people on board, that's it. It's 2 people are BLS.
How does that nonprofit, how is that set up? How does that work?
Basically a not-for-profit would be a separate corporation set up with a board of directors, a non-paid board of directors. And basically what they would be the administrative body that would do the hiring, the firing. Probably what that board of directors would do would be to hire somebody as a, whatever term you want to use, manager, if you will, to run the operation. And then they would, come up with a set of rules for their employees.
And they can bill.
Right?
And they could bill.
Yeah.
So how is that funded? I mean, through.
Well, that could be funded a number of different ways. It could be funded by contracting with the village and the town for ambulance protected.
Right.
The village, in this case, the town, could set up what's called the ambulance district, in which you could levy a separate tax, like you do for the fire tax, that would come into the town, and then the town that would be the contractual money. And that could be on a scale, like if the ambulance starts to bill, it gets, money coming in, that, again, being a not-for-profit, basically they're just, the money that they earn goes towards wages, maintenance of equipment, and buying new equipment. I mean, nobody's making a profit on this, or,
Right. So some of it's funded through tax money, and some of it's funded through billing for the services.
Yes.
When you bill the individual, like,
Yeah,
you go to MBA, you bill
yeah,
the insurance company.
or use that insurance company if an individual needed to go to the hospital for a medical emergency, like nowadays they would call the ambulance, so the ambulance would pick them up and take them to the hospital, and their insurance company would get a bill. And of course, they would, when the insurance company didn't pay, that they would, pay that bill, the balance of it. And
So how many, like, do you have a breakdown of your calls, what type of calls you are? I mean, I'm assuming you probably have people that call, the same people that call.
We have, realistically, that kind of goes like this also. I mean, every once in a while, we'll have one, or usually it's one, sometimes we'll get two, but we'll have a person that becomes what we call a frequent flyer. And we'll get one of those individuals, and it'll be that way for a period of time, but usually it gets to the point where somebody's going that much that eventually, usually they have an underlying situation where they kind of go away, and that they'll put them in the home, and I mean, they'll contact social services and other entities to, kindly, it's called animals abuse. But the thing is that, if they call our squad, we gotta go.
Right, I understand that. I'm just wondering,
But that's,
because probably some people, they didn't have insurance, maybe, who puts the foot that bill, the county or social service, some part of that?
There's a huge abuse with the ambulances. I mean, people literally take an ambulance to come in and get a prescription for Motrin.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Because it doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
There used to be a time when in the ambulance form in the back, there was a little box that the doctor would fill in and says this is an appropriate use or inappropriate use of that. Well, people started getting bills when it was inappropriate because insurance would say, we ain't paying $800 for this guy to come and get Motrin. Okay, so what happens is it became politically difficult to manage, and so now that form doesn't get filled anymore. It's still there, but it doesn't get, somehow it stopped getting used. You think? And so it's a problem, because there's a percentage of them that are abused. And, you can tell how many overdoses you get that month.
well, there's a big difference there. I mean, the frequent flyer calls,
Right.
with us, it's very minute. It's a very, very small percentage. I would say maybe 1%. I mean, and then usually it's one person that'll go on for a while, and then usually that person will, for whatever reason, go away. Now, overdose, that's a whole nother story for an overdose, is that right now, you read the papers. I mean, heroin addiction, opiate addiction is a phenomenal thing, and yes, in that situation there, you get the call, you go out with that individual, you Narcan them, they come to, they just sit there, no, I don't want treatment. I mean, you can't force a person to go.
Right.
We do have quite a number of those individuals in our community. Most of them we end up taking to the hospital, but there are those that refuse.
Yeah.
But the thing here with us as compared to other communities, we have our fair share, not as much as others do. And like with the opiate issue right now, it's going to go away, and you'll have the next best. I mean, what's making a big comeback right now is your methamphetamines. I mean, 10 years ago that was a big issue. People took meth, and now it's opiates, and now you look at the western part of the state and the Midwest, it's coming across the country.
Yeah.
Right now it's methamphetamines again. So I mean, it's just going to be another issue that's out there. But those types of calls, again, for us are a lower percentage as concerned. I mean, the biggest calls that we get, the highest percentage, 80% of our calls is medical emergencies involving either difficulty breathing or heart problems. That's the biggest percentage that we get. And that's supposed to be general public.
Which is what you need.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I mean, when you look at the breakdown overall, probably 75 to 80% are that type of medical emergency. Probably put another 10 to 15% is going to be your trauma injuries. And then the balance of it is a mixture of the ones that you mentioned, the frequent flyers and your opiates.
So right now, nobody's billed for anything, right?
Right?
Right now, nobody is billed. If you want to call, nobody's billed for.
No, right now, nobody's really billed for anything. How the squad operates right now is through the fire district, as part of the tax levy to the town and, you know, as far as.
Like ambulances and all that, just need to.
Pardon?
Like fund buying.
Yeah, that's all, yeah, exactly. It's all, the commissioners, they come up with a budget, well, we need an ambulance, they, just like a fire truck, they budget the money for the vehicle, and we have a budget each year for the stuff that we use. I mean,
Right.
we get donations that go toward, you know, funding and buying stuff as we get our donations in, but, you know, pretty much it's, that's where the funding comes.
Is there any stark loss type situation for, for which the hospitals are not doing it?
So what, no, I'm sorry.
Is there, you know, stark loss with, for example, I cannot, as a doctor, I cannot sell braces because I could be self-referring to myself, right? So, is there any reason why hospitals don't take over this?
Well, some hospitals, like example, Martinville Hospital runs the ambulance over there. And yes, the hospital can run an ambulance. Martinville Hospital does,
They can do the
you get down in New York City, like Presbyterian and Columbia. And also Hudson out on Long Island, it's Hudson Northwell. I mean, you have a lot of bigger hospitals run the ambulance services. And yes, a hospital can run the ambulance service.
Have you talked to UHS?
No, we haven't really talked to UHS. I mean, mostly due to the fact that UHS, I mean, it's just like VASA is a huge entity.
Right.
And I do know with VASA back years ago when Mark Z formed CMT, that way back when, 30 years ago or whatever it was VASA Hospital literally that came, one of their administrators came to him to give him the ideas that maybe if you start an ambulance service, because most hospitals don't want nothing to really do with it.
We had a conversation, excuse me, if I can interrupt you just a minute. We had a conversation with the administrator over there a couple of years ago, very casual one about this, and they wanted nothing to do with it.
Well, they're really not an administrator, he's retired, but I don't know if it's gonna change anything.
No, that'd be corporate
Yeah.
policy.
But that's gonna be the corporation of UHS and not, I mean, if it was a community hospital, it might be something that would be, you know, looked at. I don't think with UHS, with their white entity like VASA, that they really want to get in that business.
Well,
So,
Delaware Valley is a community hospital, and it's not UHS. I mean, it's affiliated with UHS and increasingly becoming part of UHS, but it's still a community hospital. So, you know, personally, I think it would make complete sense to do it. But the problem with EMS is the billing. It's not a winning proposition. It's not a money maker.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
Because of all the abuses that happen with it. And insurance is love to deny bills. You know, it's like the helicopters, you know, $55,000 for a ride. And every time one of those gets denied, it's hard for the company to swallow it, you know. So that's why it becomes a hot potato and nobody wants to touch. So in order for it to be successful, it has to be a community effort, you know, type of situation. You know, do we have a need? Absolutely, we have a need because AMR is becoming increasingly difficult to work with, and we're having difficulty, you know, with getting ambulances, and we're having huge waiting times, and you know, we have a patient that's critically ill waiting 2 hours in the emergency room to get transported. So that's not good. So this is a big problem for us. And me as a director of the emergency room, I can tell you that I'm sick and tired of it because, you know, you stabilize somebody and you need to get them somewhere and the weather usually sucks around here. So what happens is you end up sitting on a sick patient for hours at a time, and that's not good. That's not good whatsoever. So it is a very important issue that somebody needs to take a look. And I think that the village and the town, they need to get together with the hospital and figure out how we're going to fix this because it has to be fixed. Right now, we're not serving the community right.
So if you had a separate entity, I'm sorry, Kathy. If you had a separate entity, you would bill us for the service. Do you have any kind of numbers of what it would cost if we
There's a
took it out
couple,
versus
yeah.
that?
There's a couple models that can fit with that. Now, one model is what they did over in Sydney. Now, Sydney pretty much formed a not-for-profit. And then with that not-for-profit, they hired another entity to do all their billing and collections, but the not-for-profit runs the operation. And also along with that being that they have the hospital in Sydney, they do a lot of transports out of that hospital, which obviously that's an income for them. And so they pretty much run in the black, so they don't really do too much contractual billing because they had some seed money to get started on. And they've been able to, by the billing for the calls that they're running, together with the transports out of Sydney Hospital, because that's a tertiary hospital. Most of your patients have to be transported someplace. They've been able now, after I forgot how many years, it's been 5, 6 years now. They pretty much, after I do believe from what Ray said, the second year, have been in the black. I mean, able to cover their expenses. And
like you said, they're not trying to make a profit.
Right, they're not trying to make a profit, exactly.
Pay for themselves.
And, but they needed some startup money to get going with, but once they got everything rolling, because I guess they in the beginning thought they might have to contract, but they haven't had to do that because of
What kind of startup money are you talking? Do you know that?
Sydney, what they did over there is I think it was either $200,000 or $300,000 that they borrowed from a bank, and an entity, the Sydney Fire Department, put up collateral to cover the loan from the bank. And it was either $200,000 or $300,000. I can't remember now from my notes which one it was. But that's what they used for their startup money. And then I do believe the first year they were running a little bit in the red, but then as the business model got working and they got their billing underway and they found out the ins and the outs of the billing and everything, the end of the second year they were in the black. And then as time went on, the running became smoother and smoother from what our understanding is over there. So to the point where they've actually put another crew on because of the amount of transports that they do get out of that hospital. And that's one of the items that we looked at their business model there, is that with the hospital sitting here, and as the doctor mentioned, is that people sitting there for 1, 2, or 3 hours waiting for a transport, where if we had a crew here, now obviously you just have to always make sure having an ambulance sitting here to cover our community, but to have another rig able to take those transfers, and then that would cover both your bases and keep your operating expenses, to the point where you could be a functional entity.
One of the bigger reimbursements is a transport.
I imagine, because that's probably we do more.
How,
And it's guaranteed payment.
yeah, how Walton, would he still work at if it was a non-profit? Out of the same location? How would that work?
Well, what would have to be done, again, I'll refer back to what happened over in Sydney, something like that similar would have to happen here, is that currently the Walton Fire District owns the ambulances and all of the equipment. So something would have to be worked out with the district for the not-for-profit to buy for X number of dollars, that equipment, whatever that agreement was worked out. Now, and that's what happened over in Sydney. In the case
So
of
that must have
Sydney.
been the $200,000 or $300,000, that must have been included.
No, I do believe what happened in Sydney is that they, for a very low cost, they kind of just said, here, take.
Well, yeah, I would think that would be the way it should work, because
For a very,
the taxpayers pay.
right, the taxpayers paid for it, so I think what do over there for whatever the legal amount was, they transferred everything over. And then to start up over there, they housed the ambulances at the city fire station to begin with, paying them so much a month for a place to keep the ambulances, the old squad rooms, they made it into a bunk room, and they paid them so much money a month for rent. And then as time went on, they constructed their own building, as time went on, and they got more money, in the black, they built their own building and so on and so forth. So I would think here, probably the same type of agreement would be initially the way to go, would be the only reasonable way to doing it is to work with the district to come up with a method of getting the ambulances and the equipment. And then along with that, the next step would be to work something out for a rental or whatever type of model that everyone would agree on, putting a building up or even over. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen.
I would like to have the village, the town, and maybe representatives from their nonprofit, and maybe Hancock too, come, so we get a better understanding. 'Cause I mean, this is all new to me. I'm kind of,
Yeah.
I'd like a better understanding before we decide where we're gonna go. I mean, I like the idea of the nonprofit, how their sense.
Yes.
But maybe well, Hancock does a better, I don't know.
Well, as I said, you got, in this county right now, locally here, you have two models. I mean, town of Hancock was the town one down there.
How long have they been doing that?
About the same length of time as Sydney, within a year or so.
Do you think one is better than the other? I mean, in your research, which way do you?
Sydney, I believe is better because
The
I
nonprofit.
think
that's running in the red.
I think with the hospital sitting here, that the city model with a non-for-profit would be a lot more feasible. Because I do know that in Hancock, the town makes up the difference, because they do very few transport. I mean, one transport, when, well, let's say DVH can't get AMR, they'll have, if Hancock can get a crew, they'll have Hancock come up and cover that, or they'll have city come over and they get the coverage. And I do know that Hancock has difficulty, the town is always, pumping money into it because they can't turn the thing over into the black.
So this would be that the nonprofit would pay the crew.
Yes.
Then they're become paid, and that's how they can be available 24/7.
Exactly. They would pay the crew.
And then they have to pay somebody to do the bookkeeping.
They would be the employer. They would, however they want to do it, they could contract it out, but basically they're the employer. Whatever benefit package, whatever, all that will be done by that not-for-profit. The board of directors would put all that together, together with an attorney, come up with all the paperwork, and it would be a self-sustaining corporation, not-for-profit corporation.
I would assume it'd be pretty close to our situation, number of calls and stuff probably, or.
We do about 700 calls a year.
Yeah.
And that does not include the transfers.
Right.
But if we were to include the transfers, what we were just speaking about.
Yeah.
The hospital does between 1 and 3 a day.
Yeah.
They do. The hospital does.
Okay. Is that, I mean, are your number of calls similar to what Sydney's, do you think, or you don't know?
Probably pretty close, I would have to say. I mean, back years ago, Sydney ran a lot more calls than we did here in Walton. But over the years, Sydney's, their population and their whole has slimmed down from what it used to be. And I think right now I would dare say it's darn close to probably what we run here.
I'd like to hear from that nonprofit.
Yeah.
I think we need to do this sooner than later.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, well,
I think it's going to revive it now. I think
It's like the adage, it's not if, it's when.
Right.
I mean, and it's not like we're trying to run the squad out of business. I mean, Patsy and I both on the squad. I've been on the squad for 45 years. And I hate to see the squad go, but then again, too, is that like when I worked for the company and now I'm over at Oleana doing what I'm doing over there. I mean, during the day when I see this drop a call, it just tears you apart. Like, but we just don't have. But you look back years and years ago when you had Delmat, you had the Foundry and Bailey's, where the squad and fire department worked there. The phones would go off. They would let them go on a call and come back in there, and we never dropped a call. But as time has gone on, the whole model has changed, and you got to kind of roll with the punches. And even in the fire department side, is that even if you had that ambulance there with that one crew or two, or even if you had a transfer ambulance with it, however the model is, if you have a major multiple casualty incident, like an accident or a major deal, you're still gonna need that help, and that's what the model, like in what they did in Stanford, of course, the problem with Stanford, it doesn't have any ambulance, but here, would be in the fire department, would be to make a first response unit, which would be either BLS or ALS, depending upon who's in the fire department, we could have an ALS first response unit. That if you did, say, you got a barrage of things happening at once, they could go and handle the call until they almost got there to take care of it. So, I mean, the whole thing's about the people, the taxpayer, the people who live here is our first concern.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for your 40 years of doing this. It's great.
But it's a tough pill to swallow for, you have a lot of respect for the fire department, and like over the years how we've done it like that, and you just sit there thinking that it's gotta change, but the thing is that the change is for the community, to give the service that they deserve. I'd love to have a waiting list like when I got in the squad, there's a waiting list of people to join the squad. And,
That's true of our fire companies.
and the fire companies as well.
Yeah.
And nowadays, you're out there having an open house, just trying to lure people in. I mean, it's just a change in
Well,
change of times.
you mentioned volunteerism. Last year, Director of Emergency Services kind of gave the same brief to the Board of Supervisors. Wasn't this detailed, but one comment he made toward the end that really caught my eye. We're talking about EMS right now. Been talking about it for a couple of years. In 10 years, we're gonna be talking about fire. Just, I hope not, but as the trend seems to go, it doesn't look very favorable. So one of the takeaways I got from both Dr. Rod and some comments here is we need to set up a meeting with the hospital and with Ray. Is that the person that you? Ray Baker.
Ray's
Yes.
pretty much the.
Okay.
And somebody from Hancock.
Okay.
Do we want to do that too, or do we?
My nurse runs the squad over there, so.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Didn't realize.
Let's, my recommendation would be, let's keep the meeting as minimal attendees as possible until we get more information. And then when we have to have subsequent meetings, then we can open it up. Because you get,
Well, I think the first meeting is, do you do the not-for-profit or do you do the town? That's the first thing you have to decide, and I'm
It's
making
still,
the not-for-profit.
it's still the town's gonna have to be involved.
Well, yes, I think the town should be involved. I'm just saying whether there are employees. The difference there would be whether there are
Well,
employees.
let me just-
not-for-profit.
let me just do a poll, and I didn't want to do this at the meeting, we talked about this, but let me do a poll. And you don't have to answer, but is it your feelings that if we're concerned enough that the town would get directly involved with this, would you support that?
I would like to look at the non-for-profit model, just because that sounds like it has a lot of benefits. But yes, I think the town needs to do something. However, it's part of it or.
When we want the ambulance, we want, all,
There's no question there's the need, and,
yeah, so we have to do something, we can't just,
and,
they don't take the kid on the road.
you've heard me say this in several aspects. I don't want to see Mrs. Smith fall down and break her hip and lay there for 12 hours, 14 hours, 20 hours, whatever it is. That's my focus, is to take care of the people of Walton.
Absolutely.
Now, just as you know, the village, last week, they offered this to the village and they didn't want anything to do with it. So, and they have their own reasons. That's fine. That's a decision they made. But going forward in the discussion points, with the thought process that, hey, at least we're open for further discussion.
I don't think
It may not
we
get to
don't
that
have
point.
anything to do with it. I don't think that's the right answer. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's how I feel. I don't think you could just say, we don't want anything to do with it, because this is a problem that needs to be addressed. And
I agree. I agree on
We
100%.
have to, we have to address it.
But,
I mean, and I think we need to look at both
right,
scenarios and
But-
figure out which one's best.
I need to put this out there. The people have a say.
Yeah.
Because if it did come to the point where we agreed there has to be a permissive referendum and the people have a voice with that. Because if it directly affects tax dollars, the people have the say. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I think I needed to make that point clear right now, going forward. So,
But you can't let the people have a say if you don't look into it.
exactly,
You just say no.
exactly, right,
So
okay.
I assume you both would say yes. Obviously, we said yes, so.
I'm just interested, I like the course that you're taking it, but if you need a good resource to ask questions of,
No, here's my thought process. We're gonna keep the same committee.
yeah,
And the committee will organize these because the committee has all the information up to date. And the committee, Walt's on the committee and he takes all the notes. And, there's 4 of us on the committee, what's the term they use to be,
What are you talking about? You're trying to be politically correct?
no, full disclosure, that's the term I'm using. Full
I was just
disclosure.
gonna mention,
Yeah.
we have a resource that we've been using on the committee, he's an attorney up by Albany, Terrence Hannigan, he's Farmers Association State of New York, he's Faz's attorney, his office is in the old Delmar Firehouse, actually. And he is a very knowledgeable attorney
About both ways.
about, he pretty much helped Hancock set theirs up. He helped Sydney set theirs up. He's a phenomenal resource. We had a Zoom, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, whatever the electronic meeting we had with them, the whole committee one night. And I was just gonna suggest that for your group here, I'm sure that he would be very open to answering.
So I think that's the next step. The next committee meeting will address the concerns of this board.
Yeah.
Bring it together and we'll figure out the next.
One of the biggest problems that you have with this whole thing is the fact that you don't have anything unless you have the right providers. Okay, so, and right now, in this village, there's one ACLS trained medic. One. And there's one other one coming on. No, there's 2 because you are 2.
Yeah.
But, okay. All right. So you cannot run a squad without that. I mean, you can do a BLX squad where you can do this and that, but in order to be meaningful, you like to have that ACLS capacity.
Right, in the committee meetings, we did talk about that.
And then the thing about it is, when you put this whole thing together, you're looking at how do you stimulate people to come in? Obviously, finances deal with it.
We talked in depth about compensation for that, so. There has been a lot of work done and, I gotta give these guys a lot of the credit and Walt too. There's a lot of information on paper. So we just, the committee felt it was time to take it to the next step. And I recommended at least present it to the boards. So they've done that and, thank you guys for coming in.
Joe, just to clarify, you stated let's keep the same committee. You're talking about the fire district's committee would invite the town board members to that committee meeting. Not the town.
We could have a
Or,
special-
either way, as long as there's another meeting, and I sit on that committee, so at our next meeting, we'll discuss the best course of action to
Well,
either
our
have.
emergency disaster committee, which is what I assume is you two. You're on that other committee, right?
So, yeah,
I think we're covering there, but I mean, I'd be happy to come and listen to that as well. If you wanted
either
to
way,
be first.
either way, it's covered, it's just who's gonna lead the meeting I think that's irrelevant.
You guys.
Because we have enough players,
I think
we have enough players.
I
Yeah,
think that'd be a phenomenal idea to have everybody there.
yeah.
That way,
I'd like
any
to.
questions
Like
can be answered.
And
You gotta
the
know.
district's medical officer now,
Is, was you?
so there, it's nice that there's enough people.
But you know what you're talking
Here.
about and you know the need and you
And-
need to work on it.
So again, we only gave you guys 15 minutes and Ron's gonna yell at me for spending that time, but,
It's important.
again, yeah, it is important.
It's a very important issue.
Very important issue, and my focus is making sure Mrs. Smith can get adequate medical attention when she needs it.
Well, that's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line, yeah.
In an expedient way.
And I mean, in a heart situation, you can't sit there for 12 hours.
Right.
You know, Mrs.
We're
Smith
not.
could sit there for 12 hours, not that that's in any way, shape, or form a good scenario.
Right.
But in a heart thing, that is,
Well-
you don't have,
If you a heart or a stroke,
right,
you got
or
out the
breathing.
window.
I mean, that's our number one priority. The second's what the cost
Oh, yeah.
for the taxpayers too.
Yeah.
And which way,
We do have some figures.
Right.
I don't think this is the, time to release those figures.
as long as we're gonna go forward and go forward quickly, I think this needs to be addressed as soon.
But just keep in mind, there's already 2 success stories,
Right.
Sydney and Hancock. So, let's
Someone wants to-
continue that.
And the more successful one is Indy because of the hospital. And guess what we have in town? A hospital that uses those services all the time.
Right.
So, it's a no-brainer as far as that happening. And I think that,
And I think the hospital would be on board with that.
I think that as far as they
They don't want to
they
run it,
feel- right.
but they'd be on board with
Because
having it.
we need the services. We definitely need the services.
And it only would benefit the hospital to be able to have that service and
Yeah.
speed up the time in the ER.
That's what I'm
all
saying.
of it. So I don't see why the hospital would, I can understand why they might not want to run it.
Yeah.
But I don't think, I'm sure they would be on board.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Sounds good.
And, I am the director for the squad, but I'm also the medical director for the ER. So, I think that we definitely can make this work.
Right. So we have the people with the interest and the knowledge to at least move forward for the discussions and figure out what direction Walton, as far as EMS, should go. So again, Patsy, Dave, thank you guys for coming in. Appreciate it. And, yes, yes.
Whatever you need, we're more than happy to. Have a good night.
Okay. Everybody get a chance to read the minutes and approve it.
Make a motion to approve them as submitted.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are carried. Okay, the assessors report. Did she give you that?
Yeah, she did, and she told me what the percentage she thought was to be the increase.
Yeah, I didn't.
I read it.
Should be said, she thought at 95% that,
Right,
There was-
we're actually someplace
Could be
between
92
94.
and 98 or something,
Yeah.
and she said
Right.
95.
so just,
We would need a motion to accept that recommendation if you wanted to.
right, just, just for the, recording part of it, the assessor had a meeting with Penny Head, our assessor had a meeting with the state referencing our valuation or
Equalization.
equalization rate, excuse me. Again, after the reval in 2016, we went up to 100%. And that was the first reval in 40 years. Because of sales, and I'm not the one to speak as far as how sales affect the equalization rate, but there was a formula they used. Walton is now we actually have our choice. We can be at 93 or 98%. Penny recommended that we choose 95% for the next year's tax valuation for the tax season.
Well, it makes sense to me because right now we've had a lot of sales, COVID, people were buying things on sight unseen. That probably spikes our sales more than is a norm.
Right.
So to be in the middle of that.
Right.
As a thing makes sense to me.
But moreover too, and I had some discussion with Penny on this, is, and I'm not sure exactly what the valuation rate was before the reval, but it was pretty low.
It was like 29%.
And
You're supposed to stay at 100, try to stay at 100.
well, yeah, optimally you want to stay, but because of the market, we can't control that, and we can't petition the state to stay there because they do it statewide.
Yeah.
But where I was going with this is, I don't think we should wait
Another 40
40
years.
years to do a reevaluation.
What did we say? I mean, when we did it, didn't we say we were gonna do it like in 5 years or?
We wanted to keep it current.
Right.
We want to
And
do it
See where we were, if we had to do a whole new reval like in 5 years, or
Well,
we could do what we're doing.
well, that's one of these things when we settle down.
I asked Penny that specific question. What is the state's average, or what is the state's recommendation to do reevaluations? And she said every 6 years. We're at the 5-year mark now. And more information, but I'll get you guys the information on what we need to do to have another valuation. Now, Penny said it won't be as extensive as the one
That we had.
5 years ago. The reval can be based on sales, which will be a lot less expensive. So more to follow on that, in cost estimates for that coming down. But she also, and Rhonda and I were talking about this, do we establish, what was the,
A reserve fund.
do we establish a reserve fund similar to what we did for equipment, to put money into that reserve fund
So we're gonna
So-
do a reval every 6 years.
to do a reval every 5 or 6 years? And nothing we're gonna act on now for that. As soon as I get some more figures, it'll give us, more information to have a informed decision on.
Well, and when we
So-
spent the money and said it's been 40 years, we said we can't do that again, we have to keep it current. And like you said, we were
Yeah.
trying to keep it at 100%, but I think circumstances have made it that it wouldn't be, and I think that her 95, like I said, is good because I think it's artificially inflated right now.
I asked Penny if she could, exactly, does she have any say with the state on the market trend based on, the fluctuations in the market because of COVID and all that stuff? And she said, no, she really, the state looks at hard figures and determines that percentage guidelines that we can follow, either 93 to 90, we can choose one. 93 to 95, and Penny's recommendation was 98 to 93. Her recommendation was 95.
Penny's pretty on top of this stuff.
She's very good. Yes, she's very good. So, would someone care to make a motion
I'll
to
make a motion. 95.
95%? Okay, a motion
Second.
and has been made and seconded to keep our value, or to change our valuation rate to 95%.
Equalization.
Equalization, yeah.
Equalization rate, to move it to 95%. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. Great. Again, I'll get hopefully the next board meeting, I'll have those figures and everything.
Just as a little follow-up to that, when we completed the reassessment, or reevaluation, I think Fran had a proposal from the company that we worked with that was for maintaining it at 100%. So you might want to have Penny check those files. But on the other hand, I would never hire the company to come back in here again.
I was gonna say, we have to-
We had enough issues. We had enough issues with that. We don't want that back, but that should be some kind of a guideline or something we can use.
Yeah.
Just what you have to do and what it would cost, yeah.
Yeah, because this was the first one in 40 years. It had to be the most expensive one you could do.
Yeah.
So the one we come up with are just for sales. I think it obviously would be
I think we'd also discuss trying to do that, even if we had to hire some help for the assessor, to try to, without hiring the company, try to keep up on all that stuff. So maybe, look at both.
I think that we need to have, for the purpose of educating the community, we should have Penny come here and explain the significance of maintaining an equalization rate of 95 versus 100%.
Yeah,
Type of situation.
she actually offered.
Yeah.
She actually
So
offered, but
we should have her do it because, for most people in the community, it's all mumbo jumbo.
well,
And
In this
when you
day
got,
and age, she could probably do a video that we put on our page, and that probably reach more people because people move around.
public service announcement.
But, I mean, really, that's a good idea, because they would sit there in their house at their leisure and watch that, or they would miss a meeting to come out to. Right?
well, you can have her do it in a meeting for
Yeah,
us
and
and
then,
then put that video
Right.
on the website.
Right.
Type of situation.
but I'm pretty sure that we don't have a good Nielsen ratings on these meetings. We had that. They might be more.
Well, I mean, if we had to link something on our webpage.
Right, that's it, this is what they're talking.
You get it posted on Facebook, people go to YouTube and look at it.
Right.
I mean, basically, you should have something there, what you need to know about your property value and taxes.
Yeah.
It's a bullet type situation. And, because,
That's a good idea.
what we paid for that, the evaluation, almost $250,000 or something like that.
It's a little more than that, actually.
Yeah. So you're talking about asking the taxpayers to fund something that is extremely expensive, and how does that apply to, what does that do for me
Right.
as a taxpayer, I mean, I know why New York State wants you to do it, whatever, because they want more taxes. That's very simple about that. But on the other side, people need to know why we make the decisions that we make.
What was that, Rhonda?
We could do a mass mailing to all the taxpayers, because you're elderly, you're not watching, the videos, they're not watching.
Yeah, you gotta do both.
Facebook.
You can do both things.
But that's one thing that we could also reach
I
out
think
to.
that,
That's a good idea.
And I think actually, elderly are doing that more now, because like my mother, who's 94, is on her tablet, not that she's good at it. But you know what I mean, because that's the only way we can communicate with her. She's had to do that, and I think that more elderly who used to say, I don't want to know anything about that, are doing it more now because they've had to, because of the pandemic, so
But,
Easier to
it's
operate.
a better
Like
system
the
to
neighbors
get.
here, they're not doing that, but a pamphlet, they're still gonna get that same information that they can hold on to and.
we, like I said, we need to design it so that it's,
Bulleted.
bullet statement driven, and if you want to know more about this particular bullet, give them a resource to go to find it.
Yeah.
Type of situation.
And I think generally the public as a whole would be interested in exactly that, like, especially the landlord, you own property.
Anybody that owns a property definitely interested.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Okay, all right, great. Any other comments on any of the other reports?
Kevin, are you gonna add to the highway?
Yeah, that's where I'm going now.
But we don't have anything for code, I guess I saw it.
Did you get
Yeah, I guess
any
I-
reports? Yeah, any
I
questions?
don't remember any questions.
Okay.
All right, so I'll read on highway, I'll read Jeff's report. Delaware County Soil and Water has some funding available this year. We need to identify 3 potential stream projects for consideration. We'll probably discuss that at our next highway meeting. There have been a few.
We have an ongoing list of stream projects that we've been working on.
Mhm.
You know that,
That exists already.
you know that little, it's not, is it a stream? I don't know what you call it. That goes under like on my road. That goes under, that is like way, there's still the rocks that have come down there from this last event and stuff. It literally raised that.
Yeah.
It needs to be,
There's a lot of those around.
yeah, it needs to be looked at because that's what, it comes from Beers Brook down to there and into the river.
Yeah.
That did back up, something got stuck, it looked like, in this last event, and then it cleared itself because it was.
Yeah, actually, the highway department went down and cleared it.
Oh, did they? Okay. You can see where there was, it came like, it looked like it was tossed up, but it could have been moved up and stuff. But since then, it has really, I really see that the rocks have risen up. So I don't know if that's the towns or if that's the cities.
Well, it affects the town road.
It affects town road, but I think it's on city land.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know.
either way, it was.
But that's one,
We'll discuss that
I just see it. I don't know. Others might be just as bad or worse or whatever.
Don't go that way.
Yeah, but what I was saying is that there's a list of ongoing projects that we didn't complete.
Right.
And I know that,
Basically, I think what we're gonna do.
Wall has a list. I
Yeah.
guess Jeff has it now.
Yeah, basically what we'll do is we'll probably pull 3 projects out of that list that they're,
The 3
We might need
the
to
3
add
next
projects
ones are.
to that,
yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And just take the work.
So we have prioritized the list, so,
Yeah.
you know.
But that priority might have
going
changed
down.
to this last event.
But
Not saying that that's one, but because of this 10, top 10 event.
Yeah.
The priorities may have changed.
Well, we'll bring it up at the highway.
what you're referencing is there may be funding for
Right.
Yeah.
moving forward on some of those trees.
So
That's
we
good.
prioritize
Yeah.
enough for everything.
We'll discuss that at the meeting and come back to the next meeting on that. Then there's been a few issues with landowners and turnaround spots that we need to address. We'll find out at our next highway meeting, bring that back to, we need to take further action on that.
Yeah, and this is where you may need to,
Yeah, Rhonda called me.
attune to it, yes.
The next thing he had on here was, I would like to work on a fee schedule for driveway pipe permits and installations. We did discuss that. Steve and Jeff, and we didn't discuss it at our highway meeting so much, but we
We'll
discussed
talk
it.
a little bit about it.
Yeah, we've discussed it a couple different times on how we do that now when people put a driveway in. We're gonna be looking at that issue some more.
Isn't that what Walton wanted us to do too?
Right, but we're looking at not just enforcing that, how we go about doing that, because it's my understanding, and it's been done for years, was that the landowner, if they want to put a driveway and they come to the town would either buy the pipe and they would do the labor, or vice versa. And we're gonna look at that and see if that's the way we should be doing it. There's a bunch of issues, I don't know.
We're talking about culverts. and stuff.
Culverts, yeah, driveway access. So we'll report back to that too, and look at permit fees and stuff on that too, so. The other item that got brought up was, which has been an ongoing issue, is that we need to replace a current assessor van and dog truck, both in pretty bad shape. I have been watching, I go on the GSA website almost every day and see what's new. It's getting so that, like, stuff like that we bought, you cannot, the way we did it before was we put a request into New York State and they would set the price if we got it, if some other agency didn't get it. There's a lot in there with, it's kind of hard to explain when you go down through the list like vehicles, so we have an X mark on it. They do not work that way. You have to deal with whatever entity's getting rid of that truck. You pay supposedly fair market value for them, is what it says. And I've talked to the state and they told me, you contact that place, you work out a deal with them, and the only way the state really gets involved in that is they'll tell that agency that you're in good standing. So you work out that whole deal. I sent everybody email at Colorado that I found out in Washington. So I told the guy who we wanted, and there's such a lack of communication. The trucks in Washington, the custodian or the point of contact's in New Mexico. So I contacted him and told him we wanted it. And he says, well, you have to go through your state. So I tried to get hold of the state that day, couldn't get an answer. All I got was an answer machine. So I called the next day. By then the truck was taken off the screening and ended. Well, the guy at New York State told me the other guy didn't know what he was talking about. You're supposed to do it through them. So I called that guy back up. And basically, so long story short, we didn't get that truck. So now I found a truck and a van both. I was trying to find something that wasn't at a military installation because it saves a lot of problems with picking up stuff. You know, when you go on a basis, you have to have prior approval. They check, check background checks and everything else, which is understandable. There is a van and a truck, which I think I sent you out information on those. That's down in Missouri, I talked to the woman where they're located, and the description says usable. And she said, well, I really don't like that term because you have to pick excellent, usable, or needs repair, or whatever. These are better than usable of their own trucks. I talked to her, I sent her an email Friday on these two because the guy from New York State says they'll have a price on the website, fair market price, but don't necessarily just pay that price, try to negotiate with them. So I sent her an email Friday asking, said, because the shipping costs are so high, if we were to purchase both vehicles, could we work on a deal? She sent me an email back saying that because they're on an auction site, they can't do that. Well, they're not on an auction site, they're on this GSA website. So I called her today. She didn't even know they were on here. And this is her point of contact, didn't even know these vehicles are on here. So she has to check into it else this morning. She's gonna try to get an answer for me, and I called her just before I come in here tonight, and she hadn't got an answer back yet. The screening ends on tomorrow, so hopefully I will get an answer tomorrow.
So, in Kevin, excellent work. What is the cost for those vehicles?
The pickup is a 2005 F-150, has a cap on it already, which would be great. We have to have one for dog control. That has 97,000 miles on it. There's no rust or anything. This is from down south. That was $4,100. Okay. The Jeep, I put that it was a Cherokee, so it's a Jeep Patriot. That's a 2009. It has, I think, 116,000, if I remember right. That is $2,775.
So under $7,000.
Right.
Figure $1,500. Just
Well, to ship them, we'll probably make it better on shipping two of them. What did I tell you the price was for? I don't remember if I told you the price for getting one
you didn't.
from Washington was.
We were
It was like $2,750 because the fuel's so high. It's hard to get them.
Yeah.
I called one person on that and shipped something that the fair bought, federal surplus, back a few years ago, and asked him to give me an approximate price of shipping them both. And I think he told me it was like $2,800, but he said you probably can get. They don't specialize in shipping vehicles. That you probably could get somebody else to do it for less. So, but that would give us a general guideline.
So here's where my recommendation, and if someone would like to make a motion on this, I say we approve. I would like to see a motion made to approve Kevin to negotiate these contracts and get those vehicles here, not to exceed $10,000. I think that would give us a little bit of wiggle room.
With the shipping?
With the shipping, yes. Roughly $7,000 for the vehicles, and, let's do a good buffer on the $3,000 for shipping.
Because when Eric had a truck shipped here, he had a price and then they changed it. That's what worried me.
We had 15,000. You want to go down to 10?
Oh, is that what we discussed, $15,000? Oh, okay, I'm
Which
sorry.
I wouldn't have, what's it,
But just so you don't have to keep going
Yeah,
back
we
and
don't
forth.
keep going back and forth.
And we've already done that, we don't need to do another one?
No, we have.
We do this.
Yeah,
Okay, then I,
Jeff talked to a broker on, a lot of times you contact a broker, and he puts it out for shipping costs. And Jeff thought, like, for that one in Washington, he thought $1,200. Well, like double that because it was.
That's what happened there.
3,000 miles, and because the broker said it's getting hard to get people, trucks to do it, the fuel's going up all the time too, so, I had just a basic price on shipping 2 of them for about the same price from Missouri. Now that may, I don't think it's gonna be.
and that would bring it up to almost that levels anyway, so.
All right, I'm good with a motion for 15, not to exceed 15,000.
But I'm gonna,
That's how you're gonna do it as cheap
I'm gonna
as
take
you can.
pictures and prices and everything with the board.
I'll move that one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll move that.
Kevin seconded. We got a motion and a second to allow Kevin to negotiate for these vehicles, including shipping, for a cost not to exceed $15,000. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. And Kevin, again, thank you for this
One,
legwork on this.
we discussed it at the town highway committee meeting, discussed replacing these vehicles and how we're gonna write up specs and, you have to go through bidding or get price quotes. One good thing, if we're buying from another federal agency, we don't have to worry about that, as long as we're,
Right.
We're trying, like Jeff said, the year doesn't really matter so much. It's a condition, anything you find around here is these years. Around, so
Yeah.
we're trying to find something a little farther away, unless we, happen to find something close.
Well, Walt saved the community a boatload of money by doing similar to this for,
Now, unfortunately, we don't get these vehicles as cheap as we would the others, but
right,
it's harder and harder to find them out.
Right,
there.
yeah.
Everybody's trying to get some money at lease agency, especially when it's like this one, these 2 vehicles were animal plan and health inspection service vehicles. So, it's not like they were used on a base someplace where they don't really, most of the new vehicles are quite a bit older and stuff, so.
yeah.
And we'll add that the 2 current vehicles will be declared surplus and
Surplus, right.
sold in
Mhm.
that resolution.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good, again, thank you. Okay, Rhonda, are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Walter,
Yes.
you're
As
up.
far as- With the FEMA, there's been no change. Doesn't surprise me. But in an answer to what Patty was talking about there on Beers Brook, I believe if you look in the HMP plan, the hazardous mitigation, that's a maintenance item that I think it's addressed in that, but with a permit or no water in that, the town has, I think twice that I can remember, maybe 3 times, have cleaned the gravel out of the stream with a DEC permit, Army Corps from there to the river. So that is something we've done before. And yes, it is on city land, but if you wait for the city to do something like that, I don't think that would ever happen.
So the town can do it.
We have in the past several times. One time FEMA paid for it.
Get a
After
permit?
the 2011, you're in the stream, you need a permit. If you get the permit, it says you're working in water, but a lot of times when it gets to be August and there hasn't been much rain, there's no water that's visible in that. So it cuts out the dewatering. You can go in there with an excavator. We've backed dump trucks down in there. It's also been side cast before. FEMA, I know, and I think it was in 2011, there was so many declared events, I can't remember, but I think that's the one where actually they paid for us to do it. And I'm thinking we did it for a couple $1,000. And that was having a contractor do it with side cast there. What I mean by side cast is it was not trucked away. But we've trucked that away before, quite a few years. It can be done.
So what is your suggestion and how do we address this now?
If it needs, right now, you'd never get a permit for it because it's outside of season.
No, I mean, do we need to now work on getting the permit so it can be done this spring or summer?
Probably, if it needs to be done, then yes. And actually, permits for the stream work, Jessica and over at Soil and Water, she's really good at that. And I'm thinking that if she was asked nicely, she would probably do that for us.
I think that can be discussed, the highway, when they're talking about the 3 stream projects. Not that that would be part of that, but, you know, it could be.
For the procedure.
Right, yeah.
So you will be years out, right? No, well, it's coming from Beersbrook under, right?
So the full wheel fan that's out there.
Under South River to the river. Okay.
And also,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and also down at that location, Jeff and I had conversation. I had emailed or forwarded about the Bridge New York money, and he was thinking about possibly applying for some money from the state DOT to to change that crossing, put a bridge in there. I don't know if you were still thinking about doing any of that. I would
That's still
think,
$1 million or something, though, right?
what's that?
Yeah.
It's still like $1 million to put a bridge in there, isn't it?
I would think so, yeah. There's 200 million in that Bridge New York funds. And you'd need to apply. It is competitive for each region. I think for a bridge, they'll go up to over $1 million if you call it a culvert, which I think you're gonna have to call that a culvert unless they've changed it from other years. And then you could go apply for up to $1 million. If it's a culvert, they expect you to replace it with a culvert, not a bridge, unless they've changed that. And that could probably be all done. But if you're interested in pursuing on that, it's quite an in-depth application on that. I would recommend, if you want to do, is to talk to Shelley in planning, because several years ago, well, from the 2006 event, it did get a PW written to put a bridge in there, but it was way, way underfunded. I think it was for like 300,000. They tried it first and finally actually got one obligated, and that barely paid for the design. There is a design for a bridge that the town paid a little over $100,000 to have done. And fortunately, after that, FEMA did reimburse us that. It sits on a tube in the shelf down in the highway superintendent's office. So that part's already done. I think that was done by Keystone Engineering out of Binghamton. If you wanted to pursue, I think you have to like May. If you look into that, that could be, like I say, it's competitive, and I don't know what the chances are on that.
Well, is that the one you just sent us the email on?
That is correct. And
Okay.
also at this,
Reading, I looked into that a little bit. I didn't know if that was my first thought too, that one down there. But I didn't know if that would qualify under their guidelines or not. Question.
I'm not sure. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But
Yeah,
also,
right. I thought if that one did, I think another issue would be, and maybe we want to pursue this if that one doesn't, was the one by Craft there, that bridge there. If the state's going to drag their feet on doing something there, maybe that was something.
yeah, I think that could be too, but actually you could probably have the village.
Village do that.
The village do that. And the other one, but Shelley is familiar with that. The reason I say that is after we were denied, well, actually, after the design was done and that in Keystone, we had a meeting with FEMA, it was SEMO at that time, and brought them out there because we knew it was going to be $750,000. And that would mean, for a large project, you get paid for what it costs. But if they only obligated a little over 100,000, it was going to be $750,000. We wanted to make sure. And that's when they said, oh, no. But then for hazardous mitigation money put in for the grant, every time there's a declared event, FEMA sets aside a pot of money for non-disaster. It's open to the whole state. Anybody can apply for mitigation money. That's in the Stafford Acts. I can't remember whether it was a 404 or the 406 of the Stafford Act. But you can apply. Now, Shelley had, the gentleman doesn't work for the planning anymore, but put together a 3-ring binder, probably 2-inch with an application, and sent it on to FEMA trying to get funding to do that. And we come up short because of the cost benefit. We couldn't make that work. Last I knew, I know Charlie wanted to look at that and he read it. Joe, that might be up in your office, the ring, but Shelley was very aware of that. And I would speculate she would be familiar with Bridge New York and how that worked. It probably wouldn't hurt to give a phone call to her or contact and see if that might be an avenue to leverage some funding.
Yeah, well, Walt, do you remember off the top of your head the length of that bridge?
As I remember, it was 33 feet wide or long, but the height was only 5 foot. And doing that is because it's so close to the mouth of the river and there you don't have the height that's in there to get the hydraulic numbers to work. It had to be quite long. And putting in that bridge, if you were to go ahead with that, you think there's a little bit of gravel down there now. You're going to have that being on the alluvial fan. That's going to be, I think it's going to be a maintenance nightmare for forever. And that is also so in the.
Is that one of the reasons why there was discussion on moving South River Road to connect to Beers Brook directly and getting rid of that culvert?
The city will.
Yes, that was part of it. The other part of it is that structure would become, if it was put in, because it is over 20 feet and being classified a bridge, once that was put in and the county would have to come look at that, and if it met their specs, that would be added to their list for maintenance for eternity. And at the time Wayne Reynolds was opposed to that, if he knew that I was saying this right now, he would probably come over here and wring my neck. And I can understand why. It's going to be a maintenance nightmare, I believe, unless it's designed right. But you know, it's the size of the width of the stream upstream is only, well, it's going into a 5 or 6 foot diameter culvert. So that's all it is. You open that up to 33 feet. You've got all that energy in the water rushing down through there, and all of a sudden it opens up. It's going to slow right down, and anything it's carrying, it's going to dump it right there. Unless it's designed properly to do. I'm not an engineer.
Yeah. All right.
And Walt, just to let you know, we did receive some of the FEMA state money. We had already received, yep. I want to tell you it was like 26,000.
If you could email me that total, because I've been keeping track.
Yep, I'll send that to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Like I say, that's a shovel-ready project. I would have, the design is over 10 years old, but I don't think anything's changed.
That's the only way to move it.
All right. Okay, thank you, Walt. Okay.
Everyone should have a copy of the financial report. Currently, right now, I am 74% collected in the tax levy. Just a little bit more, up a little bit more than last year. You should also have in front of you the 2020 budget amendments. We would need a motion to accept those budget amendments.
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendments for 2020. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
Okay. And along with that, we had the cash audits done on my records, the town clerk, and the justice court records. The report rendered assurance that all cash receipts and disbursements were properly recorded by the individuals in these departments. And the justices are current in their reporting to the Department of Motor Vehicle for the TSLE and D program. And it's further indicated in the report that no adjustments were necessary to be made on any of these accounts. So with that being said, I have to send a copy of this for the justice records to Albany. So we will need a motion to accept the cash report from our auditor.
So
Second.
Motion made and seconded to accept the report from the auditor for the justice cash audits. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Are there any opposed? That motion is carried.
All right. The annual financial report has been completed and has been filed with the state. It is available in my office if anyone would like to review it. I have done the legal notice and it's posted up on the signboard as well. And the other thing that I have is that we received a donation. It was a deposit for Veterans Plaza by Andrea Elliott. And she has donated that $50 deposit back to the town of Walton. So we'll need a motion to accept that donation.
second.
Motion made to accept the donation from Ms. Elliott. Any discussion?
I would just say that, if somebody does that, that money should be put back into Veterans Plaza and look, we need further stuff down there.
Yep.
Thank you.
And that's where I kept it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Any opposed? Carried.
All right. And then anyone that has seen our, the woman's bathroom here, it is leaking worse than ever. Our patchwork is not working. The wood above it is all rotted. Back in October, we did do an emergency appointment to have a contractor come in and repair it. That contractor has not shown up or provided any paperwork, insurance paperwork or anything, and I've reached out several times. At this point, after discussing it with Joe and Steve Dutcher, it might be to our advantage to go back out and advertise for a replacement of the roof, possibly with metal roofing, I guess because it's such a small or a low peak.
Low profile.
Okay. That it may be better to go that route. And then if we possibly go out to bids at the end of this month to try to advertise for bids, that we might be more successful with getting something early spring and getting on somebody's schedule to have that replaced. And Steve did up some roof specs, just to try to cover everything. And I will make copies of that and send that around. But if I don't think we need a motion to go out to bid. It would be to accept the bid, but if no one has an objection.
No, I think that's a good idea.
If we awarded it to somebody else, we don't have to rescind that or something.
Well, that's what I was gonna run by Carly. I think we should rescind it because they didn't act on it.
This is the contractor that we can't get a hold of anymore?
Right.
Yeah.
Hasn't, and I mean, I can mail them, but.
I don't want to get into a situation that we put it out for bid and somebody comes in and said, oh, I already had that.
Right.
Well, we actually didn't do that. We just asked for a cost, right? We didn't bid that out.
We didn't bid it. It was emergency
Right.
technique. So, right. They came in and gave us an estimate, but he never followed up with anything.
Well, Milt has been doing what he can to,
I'm just saying to cover us so that they can't come back.
We'll send it, right. We'll send the letters stating that.
I'm absolutely fine with going back out to bid because we should move on, but just to cover us that we don't end up.
And that was only for the repair of that section that he quoted us. This going out
really
would
fix
be
it.
for the whole
well,
roof.
and just to add on to that, it would be for this whole roof area. Because these shingles were 18 years ago or 17 years ago, you said?
16, and you can see already
Right,
here.
so, you know, it wouldn't be too long before we have to do the whole, or, the rest of it anyway. So let's do it all in one package, get a cost, and, if we put metal on it, none of us are ever gonna have to worry about it again. Maybe Carly.
Hopefully, but this roof has just been, since we've been.
Well, it's been piecemealed together so many times.
And that's what, I thank Steve for doing this, because he also added in there, inspect known leak area for sheathing and structural damage and compromised installation. So we know that we've got damage in there.
Yeah.
But we don't know if we do here.
We don't know how bad it is here, because this has been leaking for a little while now. And then also Joe had mentioned earlier that he would reach out to Joe Angelino to see about that $50,000 grant that we were awarded under Cliff Bond or Cliff Crop, and see if that's still allotted for us. So, all right, well then, hopefully with the help of, who's on the building committee?
Joe and I are in it.
Okay, so I'll run this by, I'll send it, email it to both of you. I can email to everybody anyways, but just to see if you have any other things that you might want to add, and then we'll get it out to bid. And that's all I had.
Rhonda, were you gonna bring up this card?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, thank you. We've been having difficulty with the current Voyager gas cards that our highway department uses right now. They typically go into Sunoco because it's easier to get the large trucks in there and get back out. But since Sunoco has updated their machines with the chip and everything, the cards that we have from Voyager are more advanced than what our local gas stations have for their chip component. So our cards are not being read, and it's causing difficulty because they'll try them several times, and then they'll end up going up to Speedway. Yeah, I was gonna say, they'll go up to Speedway. It's much more difficult to get the trucks in there if they can get in there. And then they use the fuel at the highway garage, the Marabito tank, but sometimes if it's cold out, it's very slow moving. So I got this in the mail of Wex Fleet, WEX, right?
Yeah.
WEX Fleet. And basically it's only for, like municipalities and stuff like that can use this, but it's for New York State. So they had a whole list of gas stations that these cards work in, and it's confirmed. So I did fill out the application, faxed it, and I'm just waiting to hear, but it's no cost to the town to use it. And it's the same setup where we'd be able to have reports. We can tell what truck is pumping how much gas or how much diesel at what time. So those reports will still come through. The tax will not be added because, for instance, we had an employee that had to use their credit card because they needed gas, and our Voyager cards would not work. So we can't reimburse for tax.
Right.
So that's going to cause a problem, hardship on them. So I'm just waiting to hear back from them, and if everything goes all right, we'll just transition Voyager out, and we'll use these cards, and we can list our vehicles right on them. So it'll be the same type of setup as we have right now.
And Speedway and Snow are all nine.
Correct, yep.
The problem is,
Yep.
it's whatever.
I
So,
don't know what are the pumps that they have, that they don't get in there anyway, because they gave these trucks.
No, they
Right.
don't get.
right.
So that's how you get option. They don't have diesel anymore, they have kerosene.
Oh, okay.
So I'll follow up with you, and we can see how well that'll work.
Okay, thank you.
All right?
When the Friday, can't be anything.
Right.
So what we got.
Yeah, that's it?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Rhonda. Okay, first item is the phone system. We're in the process of getting the phone system set up. We got the delivery of the actual phones. So the next step is there is a question from the point of contact on some of the open lines. We have 7 named phone lines and we have 4 additional phone lines that are considered open. So I just gotta work with the point of contact on how that's gonna be set up before they actually come in and install the system. So sometime this month is when it's programmed to get set up, but I'll let you guys know. And just for instance, one of the open lines, like Rhonda has her phone at her desk in front of the counter, but she also has the same phone with the same number in her office. We want the same thing, but that has to be listed as open. But how are we gonna identify that phone and according to what they needed? We'll work through it, but I just wanted to give you a heads up. That's where we are.
May I interject for just a second? It has to do with that, but I've never heard back from Google for trying to correct that online, and I'm assuming you haven't either.
Nope.
The phone number for here is wrong on Google, and it brings into the school. So I get names of them and subsequently give them the right phone number, but we both tried to correct it, and I don't know how to do it any differently. I don't know how you do that. But, I mean,
What's the phone number in Google? I don't.
5786 or something, I think it says in Google. And it's 5766, but that's apparently one of the
Yeah.
school's trunk lines
Oh, really?
They
and
send you
stuff,
like
so
almost a
it comes up unknown on my screen.
And then they wouldn't bill you.
Then I know it's probably a
Oh,
town
really?
call.
I haven't had that.
So you answer.
I do it, I tried to answer the door, I said it's Rhonda, but I give them the right number.
Okay.
And I explained to them, I'm sorry, yes, you looked it up, you dialed it right, this is the right number, whatever, but it'd be nice to fix it, but we just don't know how to do that. And I never heard back from them, I just kept forgetting to ask you.
Right. I've heard nothing.
Can't you Google it? Okay.
Maybe she.
Received documentation from Planning and Watershed Affairs about the land acquisition program. Basically, if we don't want to change anything, there's no action necessary. But we do have a whole list of properties that are on the do not buy list. Unless we want to change any of those properties, which I didn't think you guys would want to, no action required. All right?
Can I see that list from Ron?
You could,
Not unless it's legal or it's say, hey,
Yeah.
well, did you have, when this was initiated, did you have landowners come and say, I don't want to be on that list?
We
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
three
Was
or
it? Okay.
4, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to check. It's not alphabetical, so it doesn't help me.
I think I already gave you that.
Hmm?
I think I already gave you
Yeah, I
the
think you
press
did
and they
too,
were
right.
down there.
Because I remember giving it to Steve. McNeil was one that somehow ended up on the list, even though it asked to get taken off of, but then around the found where it was, well, actually was taken off, so somebody gave me that information.
Okay.
And that was the only one that ever came to me. The rest of them, I don't know.
Right.
Okay. I did receive the letter from the village asking for meetings to discuss the court transitioning up to here, sharing the facility for the court. I'm going to send, with your approval, I'm going to send a letter back to the mayor and the village board that, yes, we're interested in at least doing the discussions. Is there any objection to that?
No.
Okay, so I will send them a letter and we'll set up a meeting. Now, my first thought, and I kind of talked to Rhonda about this, and I think you guys would agree, we're not going to do anything until the end of the year on this. If there is opportunity to do this, it's a big hurdle. There's a lot of stuff we would have to discuss. No action would be taken until the end of the year because there just isn't room right now. When Carl retires, that would be more conducive. But now's the time to start. So with your permission, as you just granted, I will send that letter to the mayor and we will start the process and discussions on that. So, okay. Intermunicipal agreement, we do this every year. This agreement is with the town of Walton and the town of Colchester for plowing. Did we do one last month or month before?
Yeah.
What-
No, this is separate. This is we actually do plowing for them. The other one is shared service.
Oh,
They
okay,
use
all right,
our trucks.
right, okay.
This is actually
We swapped some
Trout
road
Brook,
on East.
Trout Brook and
Brook
Wilson Hollow.
Right.
And Wilson Hollow.
So this isn't anything new, you do it every year, so, would anyone care to make a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to agree to the intermunicipal agreement with the town of Colchester and the town of Walton. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, this motion is carried. Okay, Ron, you stole my thunder on the court audit, so that's okay. Good.
It's her thunder too.
Yeah, I know, no, yeah, but you had to throw that in there.
That's what you get for going last.
Yeah, that's really all I have.
Yay, me.
What's that?
I said, yay, me.
Sure.
Are there any standing committee reports? Kevin, I just want to say thank you again for the highway, and I know Len has been involved with that too, so, good work on
Kevin's doing
that.
all the work on that. I don't need any credit.
Okay, then I rescind that. Let Len do the work and,
Haven't had any results yet.
yeah, so, okay, approval of abstracts?
Oh, wait a minute, before you get to that, it's not really a committee report, but I guess under emergency disaster. I think it would be a good idea if we could maybe like on March 1st, which is the first Monday in March, set up a meeting with the EMS committee and have a special meeting for one topic, because it's gonna take an hour and a half or 2 hours to discuss, and do it someplace, you know, if the situation permits, that you could have public people come in, because this is gonna be the public's probably first real exposure to the, to what we're talking about doing.
Fire hall is bigger. Is it better to do it there because? we have more people?
That's kind of what I was thinking, but
Do you think at the first meeting we should have the public, or should we?
I think it's good to involve the public so they have a feeling that they're not getting something shoved down their throat.
The only thing I would question March 1st is the village board meeting.
Okay, because I was thinking the 28th would be the last Monday of the month, and that's only 2 weeks away. That's kind of close.
I
That was
believe
my-
the 28th
28th
is
Sunday.
Sunday.
28th can't be a Monday and the 30th would be.
Right. Yeah, 28th is a Sunday. It's a really good day.
All right.
How about your birthday?
Thursday.
Oh, your vote?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're gonna be 60.
Yeah.
No problem. That means you're older. When's
Okay,
your birthday? You're pretty nice too, aren't you?
that's close. Okay,
We'll do. All right,
November?
thanks.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
he was like the youngest. in the
I'm
class.
July.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
79th, 79th?
I like your thought process. I think we really need to,
I didn't realize that.
let's go back to the committee first.
Well, the committee's gonna meet on Wednesday, the 10th.
Okay,
This Wednesday night, you're gonna have another meeting.
okay,
I've got a 911 committee meeting, so I'm not gonna be there.
okay, but I can bring all this up and
Yeah.
we'll throw some things out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
because I think it should be a special meeting. I'll be here.
I agree.
yeah,
So I agree, and I think we should work out the logistics to do it as soon as.
Yeah.
yeah, and we will.
So,
It has to be a Tuesday night or something.
Walt's pretty good at pushing that.
so we have the meeting or not?
Not on.
No, not on first. Let's have a discussion with the long range planning committee and we'll throw a couple dates in. We'll keep you guys informed and,
Yeah, you're gonna find out when the people
yeah,
are gonna present to be here too, so.
right.
Good the last 2 Mondays. Mondays are usually a pretty good day.
I just need to know when you decide to have that committee meeting, because I have to advertise it because you're all together as a board.
Right.
Yeah.
That date will probably come out of the meeting on Wednesday with the long range planning committee. That's the committee who's putting all this information together, so
All right.
it's the fire district's long range planning committee, so. Okay.
In the meantime, I'll try and send out, I've got a whole bunch of other little bullets that might help people. You know, like, ambulance and EMS service is not an essential service. But if you call 911, by law, they have to dispatch an ambulance if you ask for it. You know, so you get the guy who has his belly button.
That's the one I used to. We got the one going down the road. Your belly button hurt. I couldn't, anyway. So,
Yeah, that's how dumb, it's like the fire department not being able to bill, and that's never gonna change until we get a Republican legislature in New York State.
Yeah.
That'll never happen either. Well, it's New York City. Everybody moves out of New York City.
okay,
Hey, Joe,
everybody look.
Yeah.
Oops.
Walt. Go ahead, Walt.
actually, for the long-range planning, we've been meeting Wednesdays or Thursdays. And I think that was good for most of the committees, so I'm thinking Wednesdays or Thursdays would probably be something to kind of keep in the radar.
Okay,
I'm just saying that Dave is quite busy with other things if you wanted the whole committee there, you know, on both sides.
good idea.
Okay,
Abstract, so moved.
Second,
abstracts. I have a motion and a second for approval. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay,
I'll make a motion to an executive session. Legally after, right, for personnel.
second,
okay, motion's been made and seconded to go into executive session to discuss personnel and potential litigation.
A matter relating to a particular employee
Yes,
and negotiations.
and negotiations. Not, what did I say, litigation? Yeah, negotiations, excuse me. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
That motion's carried.
We adjourned.
Good night, all.
Well, don't we have to end this part to go to that?
Yeah.
Well, no.